I used to believe that if you loved someone hard enough, they'd eventually learn how to love you back. But now, as I sat in my kitchen, the late afternoon light filtering through the blinds, I realized just how naive I'd been. Michael stood across from me with a smile too perfect, too polished. He held out a glass of water, his voice warm, casual. "You've barely had anything to drink today," he said, his eyes soft. "Here, this'll help." And I smiled. I took the glass with steady hands, but inside every nerve in my body was on fire because just 24 hours ago, I'd discovered a life insurance policy in his desk drawer, one he'd taken out in my name, worth $2 million, without my knowledge. And then I found his browser history. Searches like, "How to make a hiking accident look natural," and "Best trails for solo walks. No surveillance." I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I smiled, just like I did now. Just like he expected. I watched the glass in my hand, the way the sunlight bent through it. How innocent it looked. But I knew better. This wasn't about hydration. This was a test, a setup, a moment. He probably rehearsed in his mind a dozen times. And maybe, once upon a time, I would have been too blind to see it, too forgiving, too in love. But not anymore. Because this wasn't a love story. This was a murder plot dressed up in affection. And if he thought I'd drink that water without a second thought, he didn't know me at all. Have you ever looked someone you love in the eye and realized they were the reason you didn't feel safe anymore? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss how I turned his perfect little plan into his biggest mistake. We met when I was 50 and freshly retired from a long, steady career in finance. I'd always been practical, composed, the kind of woman who kept lists for her lists and wore pearls not for style, but because they felt like armor. Michael was 10 years younger, charming, and devastatingly handsome in that golden boy kind of way. He said all the right things and looked at me like I was the only woman in the room. At a time when I thought love had long since passed me by, he made me feel seen, desired, alive. We got married after just 10 months of whirlwind romance. My friends raised eyebrows. My sister warned me. But I didn't care. I'd spent a lifetime playing it safe. Michael felt like the one risk I was willing to take. The first few years were beautiful, almost dreamlike. He planned weekend getaways, brought me flowers for no reason. We'd stay up late watching old movies, laughing in the dark. He made me feel like I was in the center of some great love story that had finally found its time. But slowly, quietly, the cracks began to show. At first, it was small things. He'd forget to pay bills, though I knew he had the money. He always needed just a little more time, a little more help. Then came the failed ventures, a restaurant idea with a college friend that disappeared with $50,000, a can't-miss crypto investment that somehow wiped out another $20,000. I didn't mind helping, at least not at first. I had enough saved from my years of work. I was his wife. This was what partnership looked like, right? Then came Vanessa, his younger sister, fresh out of a breakup, allegedly needing a few weeks to get back on her feet. She arrived with 3 suitcases and a box of scented candles, took over the guest room, and never left. She was polite in that distant, cutting way, always calling me Helen instead of sis, always apologizing for things that didn't need apologizing. She and Michael whispered in corners and paused their conversations when I entered the room. I chalked it up to family closeness, gave them space. Meanwhile, I became the quiet provider, the housekeeper, the cook, the ATM. I sold some of my old jewelry to help pay down a sudden gambling debt Michael confessed to in tears. I didn't ask questions. I just wired the money. When Vanessa complained that her room didn't get enough sun, I offered her our master bedroom. Michael called me generous. Vanessa called it a mature choice. But Goofy, my 12-year-old Labrador, never warmed to either of them. He'd growl low in his throat when they came near. He'd sit beside me like a furry shield, ears perked, body tense. At night, when Michael tried to wrap his arms around me in bed, Goofy would whine softly from his spot on the rug, restless, alert. I used to joke that he was jealous. Now, I wonder if he was just smarter than me, because deep down, I had begun to feel it too. That sense of being watched, measured, waited on, not like someone cherished, but like someone counted on, planned around, like a paycheck waiting to expire. And yet, I kept loving them, kept hoping, kept believing that if I gave more, did more, proved more, they'd see me again. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't the wife in this story. I was the target. It started with a phone call. I had just transferred another $330,000 into Michael's account. He told me it was for a business opportunity, his last big push to finally secure that partnership with the Graham Group. He said it would change everything for us, that we'd finally live the life he always dreamed of giving me. I believed him. Of course I did. He answered the call on the second ring, but something in his voice was off. Rushed, breathless, distracted. Got it, he said. Thanks. Michael, I said. I just wanted to be sure you received. He hung up. No goodbye. No thank you. Just silence. I stood there. Phone, still pressed to my ear, confused, then oddly chilled. Something in my stomach turned. Maybe it was the abruptness. Maybe it was something deeper, something that had been trying to speak for months, but I hadn't been ready to hear. Then the line came back on. At first, I thought he'd called me back. But no, he hadn't hung up properly. The connection was still open. And that's when I heard it. Vanessa's voice, sharp, dismissive. She did it? Yeah, Michael replied. Transferred the full amount this time. I froze. She's too easy, Vanessa said, laughing. Honestly, I don't know why we didn't push for more sooner. Michael chuckled. Because she's always watching. She's too careful. I had to sell the business idea just right. God, Vanessa muttered. What a waste. We could have done this a year ago, Michael's voice dropped. Be patient. Once the policy matures, we won't have to deal with any of this. My lungs forgot how to breathe. I slowly lowered the phone from my ear, as if afraid the sound might break me. My hands trembled. My pulse roared in my ears. I stood there in the middle of my living room, listening to the sound of my own world collapse. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling for hours, heart racing, mind cycling through every memory, every apology, every touch, every lie. At 2 a.m., I got up. I started with Michael's home office. The drawer I had never opened was unlocked. Inside, papers, insurance statements, a copy of my birth certificate, a blank envelope from Pacific Fidelity Life Insurance. I read the numbers 3 times, a $2.5 million policy, taken out 6 months ago. Beneficiary, Michael Dawson. I checked the dates, the terms, the signature. Mine forged. On his laptop, I found the rest. Searches for life insurance payout timelines. Accident. Coverage clauses. Hiking trail conditions. How to remove fingerprints from hiking gear. I couldn't feel my body anymore. The walls around me felt like they were pulsing. My legs were heavy, my face numb. At dawn, I drove to the insurance office listed on the documents. The clerk at the desk was young and chipper. "Hi," she said. "How can I help you today?" I slid the paperwork across the counter. She scanned it, then looked up. "Oh, you're Mrs. Dawson," she said. "Yes, of course. We processed this one personally. It's one of our premium tier policies." Her smile was too bright, too innocent. I nodded slowly. She leaned in confidentially. "Your husband really wants to make sure you're taken care of." I stared at her, trying to process the bitter irony of those words. And in that moment, everything inside me changed. I wasn't scared. I wasn't sad. I was awake. For the first time in years, I was completely, terrifyingly awake. He wasn't going to kill me, because I had just come back to life. The morning Goofy disappeared was the moment everything broke. For 12 years, no matter what, he was always there, curled up on the left side of the bed, nose tucked into his paws, rising to greet me with a gentle nudge and a wagging tail. That morning the spot was empty. At first, I didn't panic. I assumed maybe he had wandered to the kitchen or was asleep on the porch. But after calling his name and checking every room twice, I felt it. That cold, sinking weight in my stomach, the kind that only shows up when something is truly wrong. I stepped outside. The yard was still, quiet. His leash was still hanging on its hook, his bowl untouched. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Michael, dressed casually in athletic wear, coffee, mug in hand, looking for the mutt, he asked, taking a slow sip. I turned to him. "Where is he?" He shrugged. "I dropped him off somewhere." My mouth went dry. "What do you mean, somewhere?" Vanessa appeared behind him, stretching dramatically. "Honestly, Helen," she said, "you should thank him. That dog was a mess, shedding everywhere, stinking up the place. Michael did you a favor." Michael added, "He was old. He had what? Maybe a year left, tops. It was time." The world tilted. "You got rid of my dog without asking me?" I whispered. Michael blinked, his tone oddly calm. "I got rid of a liability. He barked every time I came near you. Made it hard to get close." Vanessa snorted. "He hated us. Dogs know, I guess." My hands curled into fists at my sides. I didn't trust myself to speak. Rage buzzed under my skin, hot and pure. That dog was more than a pet. He had been my shadow through grief, through loneliness, through every bad day Michael and Vanessa had piled on me. He was the one soul in this house who had never taken advantage of my kindness, and they threw him away like garbage. I turned, walked inside, closed the door, and locked it behind me. Then I sat on the kitchen floor and cried. Not just for Goofy, but for every piece of myself I'd let erode over the years. And when the crying stopped, something else rose in its place. Stillness, then focus. They had taken everything. My money, my trust, my safety, my dog. But they hadn't taken me. Not yet. I stood up. I dried my face, and I began to plan. Because if they wanted to lure me into the woods and make my death look like an accident, they were going to find out what it really felt like to underestimate a woman who had nothing left to lose. And this time, the ending wouldn't be written by them. It would be written by me. Michael knocked on my bedroom door that evening, something he rarely did. He stepped inside, with the same polished smile he wore when he wanted something. "Helen," he said softly. "Vanessa and I were thinking, you've been under a lot of stress lately. Maybe it's time for a little reset." I didn't respond. I just stared at him, waiting. He continued. There's a trail up at Sable Ridge. It's beautiful, quiet. We thought it might be nice to get some fresh air, stretch our legs. Vanessa appeared behind him, hands clasped sweetly in front of her, her tone laced with artificial warmth. I know I've been tense lately, snappy. I'm sorry for that, Helen. I just thought it would be good for us. Some bonding, outdoors, together. I raised my eyebrows in quiet amusement. These two couldn't fake sincerity if it were written out for them phonetically. Still, I smiled. That sounds lovely. They blinked, clearly surprised at how easily I agreed. Vanessa nodded eagerly. We'll pack snacks, water, just a few hours. It's a beginner trail. Perfect, I said. I spent the rest of the night preparing, not for a hike, but for war. I dug into the emergency kit I'd kept since my climbing days. Michael never knew I'd once been certified in wilderness survival, or that I used to lead weekend treks up steep, rocky inclines before he even entered my life. To him, I was just the woman with soft hands and soft boundaries. That version of me no longer existed. By midnight, I had everything I needed. A concealed first aid pouch, electrolyte tablets I trusted, and 2 protein bars laced with just enough of the sedative I'd found stashed in Vanessa's bathroom drawer to knock out a grown man for 3 hours. Let them bring the poisoned water. I'd bring something better. Morning came with clear skies and fake smiles. We drove together in Michael's SUV, Vanessa chattering about the views, the wildlife, how healing nature could be. I played along, nodding, humming in agreement, occasionally glancing at Michael in the mirror. He avoided my eyes. The trail was secluded. Serene. Too serene. Birds chirped. Leaves crunched beneath our boots. Halfway through the hike, Michael pulled a chilled bottle from his backpack and held it out to me. Here, he said. Electrolyte water. You need to stay hydrated. I took it, twisted the cap, brought it to my lips, and smiled. Then I lowered it. You know, I said, pulling out the energy bars I'd brought. We've been walking for a while. You two should eat something too. I offered them the bars. They took them, unwrapped them, bit in. Vanessa groaned. Oh my God. Finally something. With flavor. I watched them eat, chewed a small piece of plain bread I'd tucked into my own pocket. 10 minutes later, Michael stumbled, then Vanessa. Their movements slowed, like film melting in a projector. Words slurred, legs buckled. Michael fell to one knee. What the hell? Vanessa collapsed beside a tree, blinking rapidly. I stepped forward, calm as ever. I never drank that. Water, I said softly. But you? You swallowed every bite of the story I fed you. They stared at me, horror dawning through the haze. You drugged us, Michael rasped. No, I said. I outsmarted you. And just as I turned to leave them lying there, pathetic and powerless, I heard something. A groan. Not theirs. I turned. A man. Further up the trail, off the path, slumped against a tree, bleeding. Without thinking, I ran to him. His eyes fluttered open. Help. I fell. My leg. I stabilized his ankle, checked for signs of head trauma, called for emergency, rescue using the satellite beacon I always kept in my hiking pack. His name was Leonard, and when the medics arrived and I stood beside him helping lift him into the gurney, he looked at me with something between gratitude and curiosity. You saved me, he said. Just lucky timing, I replied. Later, he would tell me he was the CEO of the Graham Group. the very company Michael claimed he was trying to partner with. But in that moment, as the helicopter blades whirred and the stretchers disappeared into the sky, I realized something far more important. Michael and Vanessa had planned my final hike. Instead, it became their fall. By the time Michael and Vanessa stumbled back into town, disoriented, dehydrated, and humiliated, I was already 2 steps ahead. They didn't know I'd contacted my attorney. They didn't know I'd frozen the joint accounts or filed a quiet motion to reclaim sole ownership of the house. They didn't know that everything they thought they controlled was now gone. I greeted them at the front gate, standing calmly, with a box in my hands. Vanessa looked gaunt. Michael looked worse, skin pale, eyes bloodshot, ego shattered. The fake charm was gone. What remained was desperation. "What is this?" Michael demanded, pointing to the lock on the gate. "The locks were changed," I said simply. "You'll find all your things have been packed and donated." "You can't do that!" Vanessa shrieked. "This is our home." I smiled. "No, sweetheart. It's my home. Always was. You were just temporary tenants." Michael stepped forward, aggressive now. "You tricked us. You planned this." I handed him the box. Inside were the shredded copies of the fake investment contracts, a flash drive with voice recordings, and a printed list of every search term he'd entered on his laptop. "I didn't trick you," I said. "I just let you think I was still asleep." He flipped through the papers, realization dawning like nausea. "Oh," I added. "And those transfer forms you signed? They weren't legal contracts. They were blank property disclaimers I had notarized for fun." Vanessa gasped. "You lied." "No," I said. "I adapted." Michael's knees gave out, and he sank onto the curb. Vanessa stood frozen, her lip trembling, eyes darting like a trapped animal. That's when the ambulance arrived. Yes, I called it. Their physical health was declining fast. Years of greasy takeout, stress, and now the tropical virus they picked, up in Thailand during their little reset trip. I generously arranged. They were dehydrated, malnourished, and teetering on the edge of collapse. The EMT knelt beside Michael, checking his vitals. "He's not doing well," he muttered. "He may never fully recover from this." I stood over them, the sun warm, on my shoulders. "That's not really my concern anymore," I said. Later I watched them drive away in the back of the ambulance, weak and silent. I didn't wave. I went inside, made tea, played jazz, opened the windows, and for the first time in years, I breathed. That night, as moonlight touched the kitchen tiles and my world settled into stillness, I sat with my journal and wrote one simple sentence. They tried to take my life for money. Instead, I took theirs, without lifting a finger. And that was the beginning of my peace. A few weeks passed. The house was quiet again. This time, not with tension, but with peace. I started each morning the same way, barefoot on the back patio, hands wrapped around a warm cup of chamomile tea, eyes resting on the garden I'd started planting. Not for anyone else, not for appearances, just for me. Mint, rosemary, lavender, herbs I'd long forgotten I loved. They came to life under the spring sun, just like I had. Every sprout was a reminder. I could grow something new, from nothing, from ruin. Leonard called a few times. We met for lunch once at a cafe overlooking the lake. It was simple, comfortable, no expectations. Just 2 people who had been broken and stitched back together in different ways. "I'm not looking for a new story," I told him that afternoon, swirling the ice in my glass. He nodded. That's okay. Sometimes the best chapters come when we stop trying to write them. We left it at that. I didn't need a sweeping romance to feel whole. What I needed was a dog. So one Saturday, I visited the shelter where I used to volunteer in my 50s, back when I had the time and energy to give freely. The place still smelled like peanut butter treats and wet fur, and I smiled for real for the first time in what felt like years. She was sitting in the last kennel, medium-sized, sandy brown, quiet eyes that looked straight into me like they'd known me all along. They said she'd been abandoned twice. Skittish, smart, a little too observant for her own good. I crouched down, held out my hand. She came to me, hesitantly at first, then with surprising certainty. Her name was Hope, and it fit. Hope didn't replace Goofy. No one could. But she reminded me that love, when it returns, does so in new forms, at the right time, if we stay open. 1. Evening. As the sun dripped golden light across my kitchen floor, I curled up on the couch with Hope snoring softly beside me, a book open on my lap, the radio humming soft jazz in the background. I thought of everything I had survived, everything I had let go, and everything I had reclaimed. Michael had once tried to reduce me to a line item in a payout plan, but I had rewritten the balance sheet, and in the end I didn't just survive. I came home to myself, for the first time, truly, and I was finally, undeniably, alive. Helen's story proves something powerful. Even when someone plans your end, you can still rewrite your beginning. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself after betrayal? Share your story below. We're listening. If this story inspired you, comment 2 to say you felt empowered, or 7 if it helped you see healing in a new light. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more family betrayal stories where women take back their power and never look back.